Kunjabihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Ya Saranandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachadi. Yamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paramajivacharya Ashtatara Satsasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. What's your favorite part of this new house?
I like the fireplace for March. I call this my Zen den. I do my chanting here. I keep the fireplace on. I have my water fountain. I like to have candles and my peacock.
Peacock.
For March.
Oh. Vrindavan. Fireplace in Vrindavan.
I feel the heat over there.
The heat of Vrindavan. What about winter? Prabhupada had a fireplace in his room. You know that?
No.
In his quarters in Vrindavan, there's a large fireplace. I don't know if it was used, but there's a large fireplace. Here's a Prabhupada story about his fireplace, or in relation to, it reminds me of this. This took place on the occasion of the installation of Krishna Balaram. Like, beside the big story of what that was like, one of the things that happened was, while in the temple room, Vishvambar Goswami was leading a 3-day function, creating auspiciousness, like we're going to do a much shorter version today, creating auspiciousness, and then the actual installation. Details and details and details. One of the services that I had, because I was under the GBC that I was working under, we had the nice service of cleaning the temple room. And it wasn't just cleaning the temple room. We got buckets, and we took the buckets and threw the buckets up as high as we could on the walls. Couldn't reach the ceiling because the ceilings are too high. But the whole floor was flooded. In the middle of the temple room was the yagya going on, and we were on the outside on the walls, and it was ecstatic. I mean, we were completely soaked, but then the squeegees and making the place clean. And while that was going on, for 3 days, Prabhupada was in his room. Now, at least at that time, it was called the Darshan room. And those of you that have been to Vrindavan, just picture the Darshan room, that large desk. Prabhupada's sitting, his Murti is there, sitting behind the desk, but he's then sitting behind the desk. And the room was filled, packed, because there's a lot of people there for the installation of Krishna Balaram. And somebody mindlessly spilled water and didn't clean it up. So Prabhupada was the darshan was over, Prabhupada was getting up, and as his foot hit the water that was on the marble floor right in front of the fireplace, because the fireplace had a little raised platform before the fireplace from the floor area, a little raised platform, he slipped and he caught himself with his hands on that little raised platform, and he twisted his ankle. Now imagine that the person who spilled the water and didn't clean it up felt really bad. I don't know what happened after that. Who knows what planet they went to after that. Prabhupada was very angry. He exhibited anger, let's say. And he didn't say, who has done this? I wasn't there. I was, splashing water on the walls. But he looked at his secretary. The secretary is frantically looking around who did this. And I don't know what the words were after that, but something were said after that. Something about one has to be very careful. When you make a mess, you clean up after you make a mess. That's responsible. That's Prabhupada's fireplace. And another detail, he went to his room. I wasn't there. He went to his room and he asked for some herbs, some string, and a certain kind of leaf or leaves. And what Prabhupada did was he personally, because he knew how to do this, he made a poultice with those herbs, crushed them. He didn't have somebody do it. He did it, I was told. And then he applied the poultice to the swollen ankle, because already immediately it was swollen. And he took the leaves and placed the leaves over the poultice and then tied the leaves with string. And I found out about it the next day, because when Prabhupada was the installation day, next day was the installation day. And after the installation, he sat on the Vyasasana, and the leg that was swollen was distended. He stuck it out like he never did. And so his dhoti was there, and you could see I was right in the front. Like, look at that. There's leaves tied around by string. And then I found out what was that, and so I was told what it was. So Prabhupada's story. If you spill water in front of the fireplace, you know what to do. Or anyone else that comes here. Clean up. You would make a mess. It happens, but make it clean. I was thinking you were going to say all those lights in the kitchen. Look at all those lights in the kitchen. No mistake, because everything's so bright. Brahma Jyoti kitchen. Krishna's kitchen, excuse me. Krishna's kitchen. And then everything has to be clean because you got all those lights there. As I was walking in from the car, Jamuna Jivana said, 6th or 7th time, whatever the number is, some number of times, moving from one place to another place. It happens. And what we're assembled together doing is being well-wishers for the beginning, I mean, because it's already begun, but the beginning of making an auspicious beginning of accepting a place for residence for family. So a little bit about what we're doing, a little bit about Griha. What we're doing, same as is part of Vedic culture. I mean, Western culture is different and non-Vedic culture is still different. But the invoking of mantras and, proper procedures, and all those proper procedures, they're detailed. There's the Pancharatrika literatures and the agamas for Vedic rituals, and compliments of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. They've been Gaudiya Vaishnavaized, such that we now have standard procedures to follow to invoke auspiciousness for different functions. And so the invoking of auspiciousness is when beginning something. So this is a beginning. Moving into house number 7. Invoking auspiciousness. And, the devotees assembled here helps create the auspiciousness. It's not that it couldn't be auspicious without you. The mantras in themselves and the consciousness in itself is what creates or awakens or invokes auspiciousness. But beginning something on an auspicious note, that's what we're doing. So that what happens after the auspicious beginning is facilitated towards what? Of course, there's Karmakanda and then there's Vaishnava rituals. And the Vaishnava ritual naturally is for opening the doorway and creating auspiciousness for furtherance of Krishna consciousness. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam, the principle of bhakti, accept things that are favorable. So griha can be unfavorable or griha can be favorable. So it's not per se a home is unfavorable or favorable. It depends upon the consciousness behind. And therefore, grihastha ashram, simple definition, Prabhupada's simple definition, ashram is a place where spiritual culture is meant to happen. And if, there's an ashram for brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. And for a grihastha, the griha is that place, and to create an atmosphere in beginning the activity for grihastha life is let it be an ashram, a place where spiritual culture is at the center. Rupa Goswami exemplifies a principle, an education principle, that bhakti, well defined, there's an indication of what bhakti is, and there's an indication what bhakti isn't, and that's in this very basic definition of bhakti given by Rupa Goswami. We all know the verse. Yeah, let's just do a little signal giving. Those that are kind of towards the middle, come forward a little bit. There's a thing about, I won't say it. Fashionably late, there's a thing. There's a devotee somewhere from India. He said, when we have meetings in our business in America, the standard is 7 minutes before the meeting, you're sitting at the meeting table. And the standard in India is, I'm important, so I come late. I'm just repeating what he said. Everyone can get settled and do whatever because so not necessarily that's how people are thinking, but it's just a cultural thing, so what to do? Now anybody that comes in later is going to be spotlights on them. And whoa. Don't sit in the middle because then people can't come in. Grihastha ashram, so a place where spiritual culture, and in the seventh time around, it's just like refinement and refinement and refinement, at least in terms of principle-centeredness. The principle is the same for everybody, and as we progress in spiritual life, the centeredness or Krishna consciousness, best that it becomes more focused and more focused. There's always the sine curve that becomes less focused than more focused, but overall, he wants you to turn the volume up. Overall, become more focused, and what's the focus is Krishna, and the dedication of all things unto Krishna, and dedication of home, and that's at the center. For a grihastha, the home is at the center, and then loving exchanges start in the home, and the home dedicated to Krishna's service, and then it can expand concentrically out, but that's where Krishna consciousness is the starting point of the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So everyone's doing something according to their evolution in Krishna consciousness. We don't compare ourselves to others. We see what the standard is. We encourage one another to come to that standard, and progressively more and more. So the centeredness is our objective. And the degree to which that centeredness is absent, I just have to say the verse that Prabhupada would say so many times, Atakriya kshetra sutapta vitai janasya moho yamaham ameti. If you haven't heard Prabhupada lectures, start listening, and you'll hear him say it again and again and again and again. And he never tires of saying it. And I never tire of hearing it. The part at the end, he doesn't always repeat so many times because he's repeating the beginning part so many times. But it's the aham mameti. The aham mameti phrase comes very early in the Bhagavatam. And the I, and then the mine. And from the misconception of I comes mine. And right at the top of the list is griha. If I'm this body, then using Prabhupada's phrase, I need an apartment, or I need a place where I can park my body. And then that's my place. And then you just keep going through the each of the words, and he would say each of the words in Sanskrit and say the meaning of each of the words. Sota apta vitai. Kshetra. You got a backyard. Some people don't have a backyard. They have an apartment. Atakrihak kshetra sota apta vitai. Janasya moho yam ahamameti. So that force, this is the mind propensity, is very strong. And it's resting upon the body. The conception of mind is resting upon the body, because what's in relation to the body is mind. And the fruits of my work, because it came from me, the body, it's mine. And this is, the way of material life. And we can, check the box and say, well, I'm not the body. But then we live our lives differently because we have a body and the tendencies are very strong. So Grihastha ashram is an opportunity for persons who have a body, that's all of us, and have some identification with the body, which is all of us, and how to transform all of that and to a spiritual experience in the temporary place where ahamameti prevails. Very strong. It's extraordinary, actually, to become free from that conception. And what to speak of the lifestyle that goes with that conception. And then there's modes of nature that there's higher and there's medium and there's lower. And the goal is not just have a higher, the goal is beyond ahamameti. Using a phrase that Prabhupada would use, it's using a thorn to remove a thorn. Now, those phrases are nice, but then, okay, now it's authorized. And you forget the purpose of the thorn, to remove the thorn. So, refinement of spiritual life, and time number 7, there's refinement going on. And clarity, again, hit the reset button, and where are we in this position of ahamameti is being diminished, and what's in its place? What's in its place is this belongs to Krishna. One of the big reasons why to have deities in one's home is where the deity is, that's Krishna's place. Not just the temple room is Krishna's place, but the whole place is Krishna's place. And that consciousness is Krishna consciousness. It's the distinction between material consciousness and the other. I've shared this many times, but I don't mind saying it again because it was really nice. There was a man, Dr. Rao, whose home I would visit from time to time when I had traveled around the country in a beat-up old van. And he had trained his 2 sons. They really weren't so devotional, but they were trained. When they answered the phone, what they were to say was, Krishna's house. And I watched it, they actually did it. Maybe because I was watching, but Krishna's house. And that consciousness, although they were mechanically saying it or in obedience and respect for their father, they said it, but it's a consciousness that's more than just something external. When it's Krishna's house, then it's Krishna's house. It's Krishna's presence on the altar, and it's Krishna's altar, and it's Krishna's temple room, and it's Krishna's house, just like the temple. Now, temples today are more formal temples than previously. Previously, it was just get a house, put an altar in the house, and now it's Krishna's house. And then Prabhupada would say, what's the difference between this house and the one next door? It's Krishna's here, and Krishna activities. And then, the Krishna activities, as one progresses, it becomes Krishna consciousness, not just Krishna activities. In other words, it becomes more internal, not just a behavior, but a consciousness of Krishna. And then, as that is accomplished more and more, then that's the success of Grihastha Ashram. It is the success of the I and mind. So is there a place? The answer is yes. Is there a place for I and mind in spiritual life? Definitely. I exist, so who am I? And then what's mine? So what's mine is my relationship with Krishna. That's not going to be taken. The house can be taken. Everything material can be taken. It not only can be, it will be taken. But that won't be taken. So I can spiritualize the mind, and then it becomes Krishna's house. And in a deeper sense, what's mine is my relationship with Krishna. And being in this house is part of my relationship with Krishna, at least for some time. And then the Griha, Kshetra, Sutta, Apta, Vittai is also, it's Krishna's. Sutta, Apta, Vittai. Family members, friends and relatives, and wealth. It's all Krishna's. And that's a Krishna conscious way of life. So because it's Krishna's doesn't mean I throw it away because it's contamination, because it's material. It's Krishna's, so we don't throw it away. We take care more than we would because a materialist is thinking this is mine, even more because it's Krishna. So we take care of our Sutta, Apta, and Vittai, and Griha, and Kshetra, and everything because it's Krishna. So a real nice example. Ooh. A real nice example. If anybody comes across this recording of Srila Prabhupada describing what his life was like as a grihastha, he was giving a lecture and said, this is what I did, and so you can do like this. And he just, in very simple terms, described the principle. So without going through the whole thing, but specifically, I'm thinking about the cooking part. Because cooking is a big part of family life, or even if one isn't a family. Cooking, take that which so you have some resource, vittai, and it's Krishna's. So when you're expending or spending money, Prabhupada described in this, you go to the market. You're not thinking, I want something nice because it's for my family. You're thinking, I want something nice because it's for Krishna. So I want the best because it's for Krishna. That wonderful example of a nice devotee in Gaur Leela, that he was so fastidious about coconuts. And if someone even touched the doorway above his home to bring him the coconuts, as he was bringing him the coconuts, throw it away, get fresh coconuts, and go miles away to get the best coconuts. I don't know how you know what's the best coconut, but he did. Raghava Pandit. So, get the best things because it's for Krishna. It's the same activity. One knows that that which is offered will go to my family, but that's not the horse that pulls the cart. That's the cart, and the horse it's for Krishna. So spending for Krishna, and then keeping it in the kitchen, making it very clean, etc., etc., etc. In the procedures for preparing, and so that's the consciousness. ideally, that goes on in the temple by pujaris and cooks. The ideal may not be what the standard is, but that's the ideal. And those that have that standard, as well as the ideal, then their cooking is outstanding. It's outstanding. And then the offering, and the transfer of the offering, and then the distribution of that prasadam of Krishna to the family members and to others. How to transfer or bring into our lives these Vedic principles. Some of them may not seem to fit. Like, just one example. There's one godbrother who one day was married, and the next day he's on a morning walk with Prabhupada, and so he's gotten right in the front and asked Prabhupada, now that I'm married, what's my duty? You know the story? Yeah. Those of you don't, if you hear the story, it's okay. You hear it again. Because a few of you here are householders. What's my duty? What's my primary duty? Prabhupada said, before you take your meal, your primary duty is you go to the door and you call out 3 times. Is anyone here who has not had their meal? Please come. That's all the Prabhupada said. And the devotee thought, I don't think he understood my question. So he asked it at the end of the morning walk, before getting into the car, etc. And he asked the same question, he got the same answer. And that's Vedic culture. It is, whatever I have, it's not mine. And if it's meant for others, then I should behave accordingly. So the principle of charity, not just feeding people who don't have something to eat, that's something. But the even broader is the position of being charitable. So then where does charity go? And that's the standard answer that Prabhupada would give to that question is Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And contribute to the temple. Other many causes that are Krishna conscious causes. And so that's the Grahasta's facility. It belongs to Krishna. Use it in Krishna's service. And what's the best way to use it in Krishna's service? We have different natures and different propensities, so we follow those natures and propensities, but the principle doesn't change. And we have to find the means according to our nature and within our family. For example, what's an appropriate expression of it's all Krishna's? How do we do that? And progressively, little by little, continue moving in that direction. Always be looking forward to the next step and the next step. And that's Krishna consciousness. So may you all become Krishna conscious. Let your home be a place where it's an ashram, not just comforts. Comforts is fine, but let it be a place where spiritual centeredness, Krishna centeredness, whether you have a fireplace or not. But if you have one, make it Krishna-centered. So any discussion? I see my watch says it's 12 minutes after 8. We have some time.
There was a question online.
There's a question online already.
His name is Cantori. will I still make progress if I only chant 3 rounds per day?
Yes. And as you chant 3 rounds per day, 2 things. Add an adjective, attentive. And second thing, always be looking forward to when those 3 attentive rounds can become 4. Always be looking forward to progressing further. Anything else? Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, as you travel around and you do a lot of these Griha Pravesha ceremonies, what do you see as perhaps some of the most common trends within families of how they may, what challenges they face as they enter into new places? In other words, I'm looking for areas to be really careful of. You've certainly mentioned some in the talk today, but I was wondering if you can maybe share, based on your observation, some things that are particularly things to watch out for.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is unsteadiness. When it comes to something like this, there's like a rah-rah, and then some time passes, and it kind of goes down. It doesn't have to, but there is a tendency. And so it's an area to watch out for. The becoming complacent in what initially is a good intention, but the good intention kind of gets in the back burner, and instead it becomes routine. These, like chanting japa, can become a routine. It's still beneficial. Having the routine of chanting is beneficial. But when complacency, this is a word that Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses, when it slackens, the purpose becomes covered. It's just another kind of forgetfulness, another kind of material condition of forgetfulness. And the freshness isn't there, and the joy isn't there, and the sense of progressing is not there that may have been there in the beginning. I would say this is an observation, those that are looking to be progressive in their Krishna consciousness, that there's a tendency to look to external things as a sign of I'm making progress. Now what's next? What's next? It's not wrong. It's just not centered yet. It's on the behavior side, but it's not on the internal side. That's an observation. And it's it's not wrong. It's to a degree it's quite natural, but it has everything to do with our sense of our spiritual identity, as opposed to the external measures of making progress. or advancing in Krishna consciousness. To keep that internal, so that the positive is keeping that internal purpose or mission, or just like we did last night at, what's my purpose? And to write it down sitting in a classroom like that is so one thing, then to stay with it is another thing. But those that can not only stay with it, but refine it and make it more and more vital. If you're not doing that, it's going to become complacency and slackening. And that's a tendency. It's just an expanding concentric circle out as relationships also become like that within the family and outside the family and in the community. And, there's the rah-rah in the beginning, and then it's like, wait a minute. This shortcoming, that shortcoming, wait a minute. And then seeing in material vision rather than seeing with the same zeal and enthusiasm at the beginning. And there's nothing wrong with having your lights on and you're seeing what's what, but it's detrimental if the mission in relationships goes to the side, and calculating and doing the material thing, or at least having that encroach in relationships with the Vaishnavas. So that kind of puts a damper on the spiritual fire. Doesn't mean you close your eyes, but it means what's the purpose of Vaishnava relationships anyways? And how can I enhance the relationships that are made available to me by Krishna's arrangement as best I can? Those are 3 areas. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. In your class, you were saying that now the deity worship is more formal at the temple, but usually a house where the deity is, that is Krishna's house. Now that this community, Radha Shyam Sundar, is going to be officially on the altar being worshipped in a month's time, and also there are individuals who have deities at home. So I was saying it would be nice to hear from you, how do you balance that? You have deities at home, and now you also have deity worship at the center, which is very important too. So how do grihasthas balance the 2 services?
You know what I'm going to say.
The reason I'm asking is because I remember when in Palestine 20 years ago, when our deities were installed, you gave a very wonderful class. So I was just thinking it would be very helpful for the devotees to hear, because that was always the guiding principle for all the 3 grihasthas who were there.
Well, the phrase is, it depends. And different personalities, different Vaishnavas have different moods, and that mood should be respected. I mean, it should be encouraged by others and by themselves. They shouldn't not have what their mood is. They should have what their mood is. And so some persons are more absorbed in the worship at home, and some are less. Or, that they do because it's to be done, it's kind of thing. So both should be there, the worship at home, whatever that standard is, and the worship of a deity in the temple. Particularly, it depends on how far the temple is, depends on many factors, but some commitment to the deity in the temple will help nourish the commitment to your deity at home, and vice versa. The goal is to spiritualize life, and the deity is not like a functional entity. It's the deity is the Lord Himself, and cultivating that relationship as the deity in my home and the deity in the temple. There's a place for both. And as I was speaking this, I'm thinking of a particular devotee. I won't say where, but there's one devotee, married couple, very nice devotee couple. The housewife worships the deity in her home the same standard as at the temple. That is to say, she has 7 artis and 7 offerings every day, just like at the temple. And she's been doing it for years. And she's, an internal personality. And I asked her, do you worship at the temple? And she just smiled. And she said, my worship is at home. Then I heard from her husband that she this is what she does. It's Radha Krishna deities. She was very perfectly content. So it's not like she's in violation of that principle that I just expressed. And I forget how it came out, because this was some years ago. But she said, I asked a question, you must have a profound relationship with your deity. And she smiled and said, she volunteered it because there was some confidence in the discussion. I have a practice that before I make the offering, just as at the temple, I remove Krishna's flute and place the flute by his side and then make the offering. And then, I forget the detail, something like when she was going to put the flute back, the flute was missing. And she always puts it in the same place because she does it 7 times a day. And she looked everywhere, and the flute was in Krishna's hand. And she definitely, it happened twice. I didn't put the flute back in Krishna's hand. But Krishna was giving me an indication that, he's a person, he's receiving the service. And she didn't make it wasn't a big, like some people do. It was just very quiet and with a gentle smile. So her heart was fully content with very personal, loving service to her deity. So that's kind of exceptional. And now back to your question, the rule is some of both, according to one's nature. And it's not like if someone does this, then the person that doesn't do this, shame on them or something like that. But it's a principle to be observed according to one's nature. One enhances the other. To spiritualize one's home and further appreciate the deity in one's home, worship the deity in the temple. It will strengthen. That's the idea. I don't remember what I said in Palatine. It's probably something different.
In Palatine, what you said was home deities are the extension of the temple deities. So the temple, you have to see it in that way. And even when we moved closer to the temple, I came to you saying that I'm not able to do the same way that I used to do in Palatine. You said, when you take care of Kishore Kishori and Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra and Gaur Nitai, your deities are being served. So whatever it is, keep it simple, continue your home deity worship, but focus is the temple because that was our main service.
That's
that
nice.
was the answer.
That's a nice answer.
And I think all the 3 families, Jagdanda Prabhu, Ratri Prabhu, we all, that was the mode we had and actually strengthened.
Can you say it again? The part A and part B.
Home deities are the extension of the temple deities. So when you're worshipping at the temple, your home deities are also getting worship. So even if it is minimum at home, it's okay as long as you're serving at the temple, the deities are being worshipped. So you don't have to feel bad about it. And yeah, that was the main point, essence of.
But then there's when you move closer to the
Yeah,
temple.
when that's what you said. When we moved closer, you said that focus serving the deities at the temple because you are serving, because your deities are extension of the temple deities. You are serving them. So we did every day the deities were taken care of, but not the same way that we did in Palatine. Palatine was a little bit more elaborate because we were not that close to the temple at that time.
Nice. Somehow Krishna inspired me to say that. I don't remember it. Even as you're speaking it, I don't remember it. Anyone else?
Guru Maharaj, as an extension to your response for Yamuna Jivan Prabhu's question, I was thinking about when we begin the devotional service, I have observed with myself and others too, the fire is like so intense, the sincerity, the seriousness, and then comes the kshetra, griha, and sutta, and other responsibilities. Not that we don't have them before.
Not that we don't have.
All those responsibilities before, but what happened was, I'm just sharing the observation. Initially, it's like, okay, that's all material. I don't want to focus on that at all. And then understanding this principle that it's Krishna's, I have to take care of them even more nicely. I feel somehow this fire is, the core is getting dwindled a little bit.
The core is getting
Dwindled?
dwindled?
Yeah, I mean, getting reduced. The fire.
Reduced. The core is getting reduced
And
by extending into the world, what's around you, part of your grihastha life.
Right.
The core is being reduced. Why?
Also, the other point you mentioned, focusing on the externals, that I'm progressing just based on the externalities. And I'm finding it really hard to, again, come back to that initial fire intensity. I'm sorry if my question is not focused. So I would like to hear something about how do we keep that intensity still strong and be able to take care of the other stuff around.
Take sannyas? That was a joke. That was a joke. That's not a solution. Ladies don't take sannyas anyways.
Okay, we're gonna take sannyas.
When we're qualified. When they're qualified, they can take sannyas. And not before. Huh?
I said 5 women said, can we take sannyas? I said, that left 5 happy husbands.
All right. How your saying, restating or rephrasing your question is, how do I keep my bhakti life, my core bhakti life, vital and vibrant? So how does it begin? That's how you continue it. So back to, his Jivana question, when it slackens, then the vibrancy is gone. Or when I give daily focus, so the things that you do daily, that's the sadhana bhakti, when it's done with the right purpose. If the purpose gets pushed to the side and it becomes mechanical, then your feeling towards those things is also. So it's my recommendation to me and to you is the core activities, starting with the attentiveness in chanting the holy name, starting with the attentiveness in the chanting of a holy name, or say, striving for offenseless chanting, which may seem like a million miles away, but striving for offenseless chanting that will keep your vitality in Krishna consciousness and seeing the duties that you have, the swadharma that you have as a mother and grahastha, etc., is according to your psychophysical nature. You can't just dump it. So that's a nature. So now, how to vitalize the spiritual element of your swadharma? That's the question. And that's the primary means is the chanting of the holy name. I'll just share one thing and then I think I'm going to end because I have to catch a flight. Somehow I got inspired. Some 5 months ago, I had more time than I have now. And there's a young lady in China that wrote a letter saying, a bunch of things. So I wrote back a very detailed letter of, focus on these 4. She wanted I want some direction in my life. So I gave her 4 things. And one of those 4 things was a little statement that Bhaktisiddhanta made about importance of offenseless chanting. So take this as your mission in life. And she, said of some other things. And so she took it seriously. She wrote back 5 months later saying, I've been trying to apply this and it's not easy, but I understand how important it is. So it's a life mission. And if you don't take it as a life mission, becomes complacent, then everything else will also go into that space. And then fast forward, and somebody that's been practicing Krishna consciousness for, 15 to 20 years, whatever the number is, they recently wrote, my understanding is the real satisfaction and progress in spiritual life is continuing to strive for offenseless chanting and receiving mercy of elevated Vaishnavas. So it doesn't change over time. And if distraction takes its place, then life becomes dull or distracted or, less than vital. And someone isn't going to do it for you. It's something that each one of us has to do in a meaningful way ourselves. Take the resources that help you do that, but that still rest upon you're making that commitment to yourself and your relationship with Krishna, because those are the things that aren't going to be taken from you. Circumstance isn't going to take that from you. So how to make it vital given your psychophysical nature and therefore your swadharma. Is there other challenges? Of course there's challenges. That, welcome to reality. There's challenges. Now, what do I do? The mission of life. And according to one's nature in different ways, and let it evolve. Try to perform what you do today in the best way that you can, the Krishna conscious way that you can, and continue wishing, striving to progress, and starting with the quality of one's chanting. So I'm going to allow you to go, take a look around your shoulder and see how many people are here. So there's a lot of people here. I don't know how you're going to all fit in the room where the yajna is going to happen, but it'll happen somehow. So I'm going to be getting on an airplane soon, believe it or not. So I'm going to have to depart. But it's nice to be here. Nice to see all of you. Jagatananda's missing, but everyone else is here. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Bye, Maharaj.